the Mars and cars now, whichever get up. Light up my scars with a sweet one bliss. Someone flicks me a bag by the end. So, it's another one. It's another one, yeah. It's a full strong, yeah. Oh, it's another one. It's another one, yeah.
What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Stay Weighed-In show, presented to you by iBoxingHub in association with our sponsors, D-Rock Clothing. We might not have Ray today, but we got someone who's better. We've got the man Ashanti back again. Ashanti, how are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for the intro. I'm not sure I'm better than Ray, but I'll try my best, and that's all you can do.
I think you, I can't say that word, it begins with E. You know that word, the long word, eloquent. You know what I mean. Yeah, you eloquently state your points better than Ray. That's the first thing I will put out there. But now, like I said, you're always happy for you to always be on the show and stuff. We're gonna go straight into it because of what we saw over the weekend. And look, I'm a big fan of George Kambosos Jr. I think Ray puts it best. He's the man that sees the moment and just ran with it. But over the past weekend, he was mauled, beaten down by Hitchins himself. And I want to get your thoughts on the performance and if could it have gotten any better for Richardson Hitchins in regards to the performance as well?
No, that's the God's honest truth. I thought it was a fantastic performance. Won't pretend I expected that. I thought he'd win. I made him a strong favourite just with the size and the length. And I think that George is getting to the back end of his career. And I think he's only 32, but as we know with boxing, age is important, but it's also miles on the clock. He was, I think I'm right in saying, George, before he beat Tio, one of the things he was well known for was being Manny Pacquiao's one of his main sparring partners for years and years and years, apparently. Like, he always got brought over for camps. You'd imagine, even if Manny's not taking it too tough, it's probably not that easy.
A lot.
Being in a sparring for a fortnight with Manny Pacquiao, because lightning quick and one of the best fighters of his generation. So yeah, it was a truly dominant performance and very impressive. It's weird because it should be his crowning moment, kind of his real coming out moment, but I'm not sure if it is, because it did still lack a tiny bit of pizzazz for me, and there are a few questions surrounding Richardson Hitchins. I mean, I don't want to take away from how good a performance it is, but I'm not ready to crown him as the king of the division yet. I think it was a really, really good performance, but as you know, I've never been super sold on George. So yeah, but congrats to him. It was brilliant in front of his family and his friends and home crowd.
I think for me, I just like the fact that sometimes I look at some of these fighters, especially in America, I'd say more than probably here, where they've got the opportunity to get the finish and they're like, no, we'll course to a 12-round win. I think after the third round, I think George had a cut. The jab was snappy. He worked the body perfectly well. I think he dropped him in the fifth and then completely obliterated him in the eighth. So it was one of them performances where I looked at and I was like, okay, I'm not necessarily going to say you've got the wider boxing world talking, but you've got some element of the boxing world talking where we're like, okay, maybe we can care about you a little bit. And I don't want to sound horrible when I say that, but it's like sometimes you may fight, and unless we really want to tune in or there's nothing on, we don't really care because we kind of know the outcome that you're probably going to go ahead and win. So I would say that in terms of just a little bit of razzle dazzle, there was that to it. But for me, and we'll talk about George a little bit, the thing that came out of that was after the victory, you then turn around and say you're a free agent. And it's just like Eddie Hearn was pissed. And we'll say this, like Frank's obviously got the mantle for the UK side, but Eddie's obviously put a lot of eggs in certain different baskets for the American side, for the Australian side, and he's looked to do that expansion. And Eddie was fuming. And I just thought, you've got this victory. You don't need to say that. And then Eddie's reaction for me was fair, because I think he said, look, just remember, I've made a lot of losses on you. And I think you're a good kid. So he said, it's just the people in your ear that are probably saying a few things. And, because they're probably people that you've seen a lot around you that, you want to agree with them, but like, what's your thoughts on just that type of comment? Because I'm going to be honest, like, people criticize Eddie Hearn. Without Eddie Hearn, these American guys, nobody's caring about them as well. Like, you will probably be stuck on a top rank, or like, we don't really PBC fighting once a year type of stuff. So, what's your thoughts on just coming out and saying a statement like that? And is Eddie fair to be annoyed at that?
Eddie is right. I mean, I'd like to think I'm quite balanced on Eddie Hearn. I'm not necessarily a fanboy, his biggest fan, but I massively respect that as a promoter, similar to Sam Jones. Sometimes he's the perfect promoter for some boxers who aren't always most vociferous or on the front. Those fighters that do just want to be in the gym and train and spar. He's great for that because he's the talker. He'll do all of that. At times it does frustrate me because I think there's a limit to what I want to listen to, but to get back to the point, he's completely right. I feel a bit stupid not having names in front of me, but there are probably at least 5 American boxers you could say, good fighters, would have had a good careers, might have become world champions, but Eddie has really lined their pockets. One that comes to mind, and I don't know how it worked. I don't think it worked out particularly well, but Tevin Farmer. I think he did a really good job with Tevin. I think he got him a world title. Well, Tevin got him the world title fight, but you know what I mean? He backed him. And there are a lot of these, I know in America, they use the phrase African-American fighters who would be second, third on a top rank or PBC card, Golden Boy card, because they're not really handsome Latino Americans or they're not Jaime Munguia or Edgar Berlanga, all these kind of names you can name. So they'd be second and third. People would know who they were. They'd be making decent money. But, Richardson was saying he's a 7-figure fighter. And I just think sometimes fighters, they see, I listened to a podcast where he was talking about Adrian Broner and how close he was with Adrian, and him and Gervonta, Adrian used to fly him out to Miami, pay for everything, meals, time with women, like clubs, flights, hotel rooms, you name it, everything, paid for everything. And he was like, still love AB, but I won't be doing that. It's a bit of a crazy way to live. And he's now in a position where if he is making 7 figures, as he says, say he fights twice a year with endorsements, he might be making $2.5–3 million a year. That is an amazing life to be living. I assume he's in his late 20s. I don't know his age, but 27, I'd imagine, 28. You're American. You might not be from a lot. I don't know why people always have to push for more. Eddie's done a great job. You're a world champion. If you keep going, you're going to have big fights because of the division you're in or the weight. There's a lot of great fighters in and around your weight class. If you keep putting on performances, the purses will keep going up. You'll become more and more well known. Be happy with that, rather than now he's had to kick everything up in the air, kind of embarrass Eddie a little bit. Because we know a lot of Americans don't like Eddie, so a lot of them will be like, yeah, well, let's try and sign him, or let's try and do a fight deal without Eddie and just fight Richardson and unify, or whatever the plan is without Eddie, because we didn't really want to deal with him anyway. And I do think it was disrespectful. I think Richardson seems like a nice guy. He's from New York, so I know it's there's a lot of tough people and tough gyms from there, and massive. And I think he's a great fighter, but it's just unnecessary. You should have been thanking him. You should have been saying, "Wow, look what we're doing! The homecoming. Eddie said he'd do it for me, and he's done it. I'm so grateful." Oh, one of the fighters I should have named, super talented, but I can't say that another promoter would have done a better job. Boots.
Boots is the first name that you think about.
He's doing a really great job with Boots. I think 10,000 in Philly in his last fight, unified champion, now going up to 154. Yeah, that's the blueprint. Maybe fight in Vegas once a year, then you fight in your hometown once a year. You sell loads of tickets, you make loads of money, you have big fights. That's what Richardson could have done.
For me, I'll say this, even though he's British, for me, he's the best international promoter right now in the game. So it's like, if you can, and then you have his working relationships with Turkey, and the fact that you are on DAZN's platform, that is the home of boxing. That, funny enough, Eddie Hearn was the one that saw it, took the opportunity, left the sky bag, just like some of his British fighters were like, we don't want to go on the app, so we're going to leave and look how they are. No offense to him. But Eddie was the visionary behind understanding I can transition to an app But guess what? It's going to be the home of that. And I don't know if it had been at the time, but it clearly is right now. And I just don't understand, especially in America, where, let's be honest, the promoters are really poor. There's nothing really, if I look at them, like, they all are old men or fighter protectors, is what I'll call them. So it's like, yeah, we can get our guy out once a year. And that's about it. Like, Terence Crawford wouldn't even be fighting Canelo Alvarez if he didn't have to strip away and be like, I need to work with Turkey and, Benson. He weren't even going to get the Spence fight if he didn't force the hand of a few guys and be like, yeah, and Spence also did the exact same thing. Devin Healy working with, although Devin, I'll give him his props, has done a bit by himself. I think working alongside Eddie Hearn definitely helped him. So again,
I'd say Shakur.
Shakur, yes, but I think when he moved similar to Boots, it was like they had a brand, if that makes sense.
But Eddie, the Eddie's kind of going on interviews, Ariel Helwani, and just generally wanting to keep. It's almost like he's got a microphone in his hand or a boombox, and he's constantly talking up his fighters, which is a good thing. Yeah, Shakur to an extent. Shakur already had the brand, but I think he's got Shakur to another level, and part of that is Shakur's fighting, his ability, but equally Eddie, and we're going to see, I think, with his cousin as well, I think his name is Quinn Moses, looks like a real talent, and he's very, very happy to be with Eddie because, again, he knows global promoter. If there's a big fight that can come up in Saudi or in the UK, we have massive fights over here. He can come fight in America, in the UK, make loads of money, new fan base over here. He sees the vision, and I think it's just unnecessary drama, because for all of his positives and negatives, Eddie can at times be a little bit emotional, which I think is a good thing. I think boxing is a sport driven by emotion. Most of us who talk about it or work in it or follow it love it because we loved it from being children, or there's an emotional driver for us. And Eddie, he said time and time again, he believes in loyalty, and if you're disloyal, it hurt. He's not going to work as hard for you. But if you're loyal, I think Tony Bellew never signed a contract with him. It was just a handshake agreement. I think
like, you do it and job done.
I think at times Carl Froch didn't have like an enforced agreement with him. There might have been contracts signed, but I don't think it was like a long-term 6-fight deal. Because if Eddie is in your corner, he's in your corner, and I just don't really know why. I understand it comes from Keith Connolly, who is a very good manager, and I know he's with Edgar Berlanga too, and I'm sure a load of other really high-level American or American-based fighters. But it left a little bit of a sour taste in the mouth, when all we should have been doing is doing what I did to start, which is just lauding him, saying, what a fight, can't wait to see who he's got next. And now you've got the sideshow of negativity.
I think Rob kind of summarizes up that these guys don't learn. Being a free agent is only beneficial when you're a superstar who sells out whoever you fight, Canelo in a way, which is fair enough. And do you know what's funny? You said about loyalty. And Canelo, for me, Canelo's best years are always when he worked with Eddie Hearn. But he's always been loyal to Eddie in the sense that he's been upfront with him. And Eddie says the thing is, Canelo will go for the money, but guess what? He's going to tell you. He will not stab you in the back. He's going to do what's best for him, but it won't be everywhere he's leaving you a bad terms. So as long as you don't screw over Canelo Alvarez, guess what? You've always got the door open to work with him. And it works both ways. If a fighter doesn't screw over a promoter, the door's always going to be open, especially if you transition to that next level. And that's what I want to go with Hitchins going forward. Like, when you look at the division he's in, like you said, I think there's what I call a fluctuating division, in the sense that you got guys that can fight at 140 that will do catch weight fights at 145, then try at 147, then move back. Hitchins, where do you see him fighting next? Obviously, the call out that a lot of people probably say is Devin Haney, because and it's not his fault. He just doesn't seem to be able to get a fight just because of how great he is in terms of making you look stupid as a fighter. So, is that a possible avenue for him? Where do you see Hitchins looking at next?
For me, that's the fight I want, and I think, well, I say want, I might not even watch it live because it would be a very technical fight, but it's almost an odd winner stays on kind of fight. And by that, it's not that there'd be a loser and you'd be off, because you'd probably still become a world champion. By winner, I mean you could potentially become a real superstar, like elevated levels. If Richardson was to beat Devin Haney, I think that would be such a great scalp, because Devon's beat so many great fighters already in his career that you're really elevated. And then you can start talking about the guys that are almost bigger than boxing. That I'd say Gervonta Davis. I think, you know, Gervonta beats Lamont Roach and he beats Devin Haney. In December, would you be against the fight between them?
Listen,
I'm
telling you this right now. If Gervonta Davis fights anybody else after Lamont Roach other than Shakur Stevenson, every single day on Twitter, I'm calling Gervonta Davis a duck.
Well, I won't be allowing that, because no one's calling my boy Tank a duck. You
see that guy that's grown his hair out for Man United winning 5 games in a row on TikTok or whatever. So he grew it out. He basically said, I'm not going to cut my hair until Man United win 5 games in a row. And he grew it out for the full season, basically.
Yeah, his hair's going to be...
I will never stop tweeting Gervonta Davis is a duck if I find out he fights anyone else outside of Lamont Roach for the next fight. Every single day, I will tweet Gervonta Davis is ducking Shakur Stevenson, and I will tag him, and I'll tag Shakur, and I'll make sure he sees it. I'll do it on Instagram, Twitter, because I've got the blue tick. I know it pops up in your mentions. So I will do that, because there is no other fight you need to make at your weight class than that particular fight.
I'm not a boxing savant, but I don't think they're fighting next. So,
no, they won't do. But I just need to see something. Like Shakur will probably take a fight. Fine, both of you fight whatever fight you want to make. But that fight afterwards, whenever that is, just like Boots. I mean, sorry, not Boots. Just like when we had the Crawford Spence fight. Okay, the dust settles. We need to make that fight. If Shakur has to move over, Shakur will move over, because I think he's only got this next fight with Eddie left anyway. He'll do that. I have no doubt with that, because the guys that he's with, the Bud Crawfords and stuff, they know they've done it. They had to make. Shakur will have to be the B-side. Fine. They will also screw him when it comes to contracts. Fine. But guess what? He's going to fight. He's going to make that fight.
And you're still getting a big bag. You might not get the A-side money, but that B-side money is still... If I were to guess, I'm guessing you're getting at least 8 to 10 million for that fight. It would be
and he'll do that. And he'll do that fight, because I don't think Gervonta Davis will do it, or he'll make it so difficult that Shakur may have to take a cut that obviously his value isn't of that. But that's what I'm saying. Gervonta Davis, if we're calling out, same way we look at Tyson Fury and AJ, whatever, that is a fight. If you retire before making that fight, I'm calling you a duck.
Can I say 2 quick things on that fight in particular? Firstly, I think Tank would get to him. I think he might dominate and look amazing. Shakur for the first 4 rounds, I think Tank would get to him in the body, would stop him. And secondly, I feel like I'm an Eddie Hearn shill this podcast, but I think even if he were in under contract, Eddie's a very smart businessman. So is Frank Smith. I think they would take a cut and they would let it. You know what I mean? I think Eddie
let him move and make
I don't think Eddie does the whole restraint of, you know, it has to be on DAZN. I think he obviously wants it to, and there's maybe a few fighters where you kind of do say, oh, we'll give you a bit of extra money to fight on DAZN. But I think if Eddie, I'm just making numbers up, valued the fight at 12 million and Shakur got offered 16, and obviously Eddie gets a little cut as a promoter, maybe let's say he got $1 million, I don't think Eddie would be like, oh, I'm not letting you fight. I think he would be like, if our fighter wins, he's going to be an even bigger star, and we get $1 million for going to a few press conferences. We're not having to take the risk on of putting this fight on. I think it would happen. So I just wanted to add that I feel that Eddie Hearn is always quite fair in that he just has a load of money, or he has big backers. So usually I think he can offer quite good financial rewards to make fights, and that's why they're often on DAZN and with Matchroom. But if someone outbids them and, you know, it's a fair offer, I think for most of his fighters, he would take it generally.
No, I see that. And like I said, I don't think Eddie's one of them where he will. I think he may have been a little bit protective. Like I know a lot of people, you say, or he's a bit protective of AJ, etc. Back in the day.
That's what I think he probably was quite protective of AJ because he was the jewel in the crown, and with DAZN, and I think probably tied to DAZN, you have to fight on here. So that was what I was mentioning. There may have been counter offers. Oh, Eddie, I've been offered this to fight on here, and that's when Eddie might have gone to DAZN or found more money to found a sponsor to try and marry it up and get it close, so that there's not a reason to go and fight somewhere else. But that's business. It's not necessarily a restraint of trade. Sometimes fighters,
as long as you don't overly hurt the fighter. Like I think Top Rank did that with Crawford, because to be fair to Ray, he used to say this, right? He's like, just let him step out of that old man shadow and you'll see a personality. And I didn't know about this person. There's a personality between Terence Crawford that makes him likable. And it's like, oh, okay, Terence Crawford, there's interviews he's doing Club Shay telling us about certain things. That's a bit crazy, but hey, Terence Crawford, he was outside when he won that Errol Spence fight. He was outside, but that's beside the point. So there's a personality that comes alongside it, and I think, like you said, Eddie would allow that. But I just want to gloss over Kambosos. Look, he did what he did. He's capitalized on everything that he's been able to do, and he's done it in a way where, certain fights we knew that you ain't going to win that fight, but guess what? You did it. You took it. You fought literally the best of the best, and you came up short. Guess why? Because you're a B grade fighter that had an A+ win, which is fine. In terms of him going forward, I've seen the call out, and I'm down to do this. Adam Azim made the call out. I want to fight. I've always said this kid under Ben Shalom is struggling. Like, he is a world championship-esque fighter that needs that push. And I'm so down for that particular fight personally. Like, I don't see why not, but I can already see Ben Shalom is the type of guy to mess something like that up. Like, where do you see Kambosos fighting? Is he again gonna be one of them guys that, because of the brand and name that he is, that he'll just stay and target the champions and try to win and collect the bag even though he's going to lose? Or do you think he wants to push to actually try to get winnable fights for himself?
Lots of thoughts running through my head. Firstly, I hadn't heard about that call out, and that'd be fantastic. I love predicting fights in the future. If that fight happens, Kambosos will be lucky to win 2 rounds. Adam Azim will control that man and will make it look so comfy. He might not stop him in the way that Hitchins did, but I'm telling you, he will look outrageously good. Shane will cook something up and he will just look razor sharp, and Kambosos will not. Older fighters sometimes say, I just couldn't get the rhythm, couldn't get the timing, couldn't get off. That's exactly what will happen. Adam Azim, the big problem I see, and I know I'm not necessarily answering your point, is the money. And I like Ben Shalom, so I'm not going to say he's going to mess it up, but I'd imagine Kambosos would want like $2 million for that fight, or a lot of money, and that's a lot of money in the UK. If you're paying one fighter £1 million, 1.5, even the O2, you start thinking about numbers. It's a tough sell. So,
guess what? I've said this before, and I will 100% bring Adam Azim up north.
Do you think so?
100%. Bring him up north. Create, because I feel like this when it comes to London, because you guys are so big. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you've got a fighter in one area, he's got a fan base in that area, unless he's transitions into that global-ish level.
That's a fair point. Same as football. You either get your local area and your football club. They're the two, unless you're Johnny Fisher and he's kind of gone UK, like bigger than East London, Essex. But George Groves only ever really got West and a bit of South London and Chelsea fans. It's not like he had just fans in Wembley and
North and stuff that are coming.
Can't wait to see George Groves fight.
You bring Adam up north, guess what you're gonna get? If the Slough guys are really about it, they will follow him up north. You're gonna get the Manchester guys that are gonna be there. You're gonna get Bradford. You're gonna get Birmingham. They will all come to watch this kid, because I've seen it firsthand myself. When Amir Khan and Kell Brook fought, he was on the undercard. People came, watched him, disappeared for a bit. So watched his brother first, then watched him, disappeared for a little bit, and then they came back for the main event. So he'll have that following 100%. I've always said it, Ben. Just try it, give it a go, and I promise you, you'll probably make more money on that one fight up north. It may cost you a little bit more because of the venues in Manchester. They're a bit more pricey, but you're going to make the money compared to fighting in London.
Another thing that I would do, I don't know if Ben's got the money. Obviously, he's transitioning to hopefully his next TV deal, TBC. I would pay Amir Khan as a consultant to essentially just guide Adam. I don't mean career-wise. I just mean talk about him, have him to become the Amir Khan 2.0. I'd have them doing little bits on Sky Sports so that, you know, all of that stuff. Because I heard someone say recently he's got a big following, Adam Azim, but he hasn't become Amir Khan 2.0, and people are wondering why.
Amir Khan backed him at the start.
Yeah, but Pakistani background, great fights.
Yeah, 100%.
Kind of similar-ish skills. Obviously, Amir was a bit younger, but both still young men when they came onto the scene. Everything is almost set up for, and we all know, anyone with a brain and knows Amir Khan's following. Now, he went global. He was huge in the UK, but go to any country that has a lot of Muslims in it, you know, the Middle East, parts of Africa, Amir Khan is a superstar. You know, I think sometimes it's forgotten about in the UK how big Amir Khan is, not just in this country. He is a proper global star. Made it in America, you know, fought Canelo, he fought Crawford, didn't he? Did he fight? No.
He fought Crawford, fought Canelo.
Yeah.
Floyd Mayweather ducked him. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah,
the Paul. Everyone remembers the Paul.
Floyd saw that unless he caught him on the chin square, it was going to be a really tough night's work, because for that first 6 rounds, he was just going to be rapid, too long, too fast, and it was going to be a bit of a nightmare. And he didn't want to take the risk of having to do it all from round 7 to 12 and having to take him out. So I think he did. Amir Khan was an awesome fighter. So I would, if I were Ben, I would have Amir on board as an advisor, whatever you want to call it. Just pay him to be around him to try and bring that fan base over. And maybe you're right, bring him up north. Co-op Live would be amazing.
Even the smaller venue, just do the MEN Arena or whatever it's called. Even that itself is about 10,000 in there.
I was thinking more financially, because I'm just thinking of the numbers. If George is 1.5, and I'm making these numbers,
100%.
Kambosos will be expensive, because you're getting an undisputed world champion from Australia to the UK. It's going to cost a lot of money. It just will. I was thinking numbers. Anywhere venue wise would be great. I was more just thinking what Ben's probably thinking of. 10,000 is not going to cut it in terms of sales to try and balance the books. But like Eddie said with Richardson, Hitchins, sometimes you've got to lose money, because we all know what Adam can be, and Kambosos is a serious name to have on your CV, your resume, whatever you want to call it. I wanted to add as well on Kambosos, I think he should retire. But the only other fight I didn't know about, this Azim call out, that I think would work is Liam Parrow. I think all Australian, almost kind of loser retires. Whether you want to call it a cash out or whatever, it would be massive over there, I'm sure.
I mean, Eddie's got that Australian link anyway. He goes down under. Kambosos is always on. That's one thing I will say. Eddie, this thing about building fighters in your country, I mean, in your area and stuff, Eddie does it the best. If you look at the Australian broadcast, it's always Sky, it's always George on there. So he's just got it. He's got that brain to be able to do it, and that's what I like. But yeah, that as a fight works perfectly well for me. I can't be against that fight, but I think for now George is in a cash out point, which is fair enough. I've got nothing against it.
Since he beat Tio, like that Devin Haney farce of having a mandatory 2-fight deal, even though he lost by a mile for the first one. There's never been a more irrelevant fight than that second fight. Everyone knew what was going to happen, but his dad, say what you want, his dad's a great businessman. I can't even fathom how much money George Kambosos has made since that Tio fight, but I would imagine it's probably like 30 million Aussie dollars. I think it is stupid money, because I think Devin paid him a fortune for those 2 fights, and he got to have them at home. Loma, it had been paid well for. Yeah, he's fought
everyone who is meant to fight, funny enough, regardless of the results. He
Yeah.
fought who he was meant to fight. And
Robbed
for
Maxi
me,
Hughes, though. That's what he did do. Robbed Maxi Hughes blind.
yeah, we're gonna let that one slide. Just
I
quick
can't-
comment here before we go to one of the bigger stories that I know you wanted to talk about. So I'm gonna leave the floor for you for that one. But Ross saying Khan had the advantage of being a teen star and being the first South Asian to reach the top. Maybe that novelty has gone. I'll tell you right now, the novelty hasn't gone. You know what has gone is the fact that both the guys you've just mentioned right now, they're from London. I speak on it because it's here. One of the guys that I speak to not every single day, but he's here, is Shabazz Masood, IBO world champion. He's got that following here. Guess what? Legal Blows, they do a British Muslim award ceremony. It's always held in Birmingham. Why? Because you can bring a core amount of South Asian fans, South Asian community, but also just Muslims in general, to an area like that, and they will be celebrated a bit more, I want to say, than in London, in an area in London. And again, I'm generalizing because I've just lived up and I know that the communities are probably a little bit stronger over here, but I don't think it's to do with novelty. I just honestly think your area is so big. And if you look at Hamza, he's doing great stuff, but guess what? He trains out in LA, or he did, based out in Dubai. For the most part of his career, he was a bit more silent, and we weren't seeing Hamza Shiraz. I remember, it might have been Nazar's son Adam at the time when he made his Queensberry debut, and at the time he made it, Hamza Shiraz was also fighting. Frank, that's where I've been annoyed at him. He dropped Hamza just somewhere in the middle of the card and put Adam higher up. Fine, I get the novelty, but I was like, you haven't promoted him well. Back start of last year to now, something clicked. He's there. We know who Hamza Shiraz is, but he's a lot more. I'm not going to say international, but I mean he's fighting at 168, fighting Edgar Berlanga in New York City. So whereas
Huge
if you look at Amir, huge fight. Whereas if you look at Amir Khan, he did the rounds. He did probably more rounds in the UK before it was like, okay, I'm not just Amir Khan, I'm Amir King Khan, the world champion. Let me go. He even fought, like, I think it was in Newcastle. He was defending his world title against Salita and stuff like that. So he was doing a lot of the rounds, and all the fans traveled across for him. So you have that, but maybe it's a connection thing. And
Can
it's
I
just
make a wide-ranging point? I'll try and be succinct that agrees with your point. I felt the same about. I went to uni in the Northeast, so I spent a lot of time in Newcastle. I felt the same about when Newcastle won the Carabao Cup. Newcastle, I believe they have such vociferous fans because, and I don't want to disrespect Newcastle as a city, but there's less up there than there is in London. In London, you've got to compete with Oxford Street and people coming shopping. But then if you like art galleries, we've got loads of art galleries, some of the best in the world. We've got museums, we've got loads of different sports stadia for football clubs. But then you've got Twickenham and Wembley, which are just Wimbledon, which are actually almost like the most famous stadia in those sports, like globally, let alone attached to it. And then we've got all the teams in London. There's so many. I mean, how many boxers do you think are from, let's call it Zone 6 and a bit, like Surrey, Essex? You're competing against. But if you're, it's just come to me, the example of Lewis Richardson. He had a whole city behind him because he was a football fan, so he had all the football fans. And let's say Newcastle's got 500,000 people. He's the biggest boxer in that city. Whereas Hamza Shiraz, off the top of our heads, I reckon we can name 25 pretty decent fighters from in and around London. And that's one sport. Boxing is the 4th or 5th biggest sport in England, if that, outside of the Olympic years. So when you're the 20th most famous boxer in your city, and then you've got all the other sports that you're competing against that are on Saturday too, and you're fighting on Saturday night, so you've got to try and garner that attention. But if you're Lewis Richardson, it's just like you go to the local pubs in Newcastle, in your city, you tell everyone you're fighting, you show them the clips, and everyone's like, oh, one of us, got our accent, might know his cousin, we went to school together. Newcastle's not a huge city. So everyone's like, oh, did he goes to that shop? I go to I'm veering off. We're seeing the same Callum Simpson. They keep saying Callum Simpson knows everyone in Barnsley. Obviously, he actually doesn't, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I can tell. I get that as well. I get that feeling.
Almost everyone in Barnsley. Oh, Oh, you used to work in that shop. Oh, my cousin worked in the shop next door. Oh, my auntie is a dinner lady at your old school. You know, Barnsley's such a small town or city. I don't know if it's town or city, that everyone feels like they know them. I've had it being from Grenada, my country, my family's country. Every sports person that's any good, that's like British Grenadian, you're like, oh, you know, they're one of us. And so you get behind them because you have that emotional attachment. And it's my round the way of saying I completely agree. And that's what they need to do with Adam Azim. I don't think he's been badly marketed, but just get him in more embedded in the Muslim community, get him going around teaching young Muslim children, not even just boxing, but just like signing autographs, taking pictures, just get him in the community.
The only thing I will say is maybe he doesn't want to do it. I'm not going to say he doesn't, because that's not for me to say, but maybe there's a little bit like, I don't want to do it, but I'm not sure. But I feel like he would. He would.
Well, his dad seems like quite a charismatic guy. I think his dad would get it, you know, and even sounds awful to say, but even if it was slightly forced, as in you do it because people around you are saying, Adam, you do one of these a month, you're going to keep exploding on social media, and it's going to drive ticket sales and it will drive sponsorship deals. Even if it is kind of that, you do it with a smile on your face and it works. It works. And I think they are missing a bit of a trick. Take
telling you, like, if
he
comes
and get him up north.
If you come, I promise you can. I'm not going to say you can charge a lot, but you can probably charge a little bit more than you charge for your London shows, and there'll be people that will come up for it. And if they don't, then maybe we got to have a conversation.
And there's so many ideas you could have. You could have him up there from Tuesday, and you could have him going to the madrasa. You could have him doing events that he could be a part of, you know, open air events, almost outside when it's warm.
Can I just say something though? What they made him do this year for Eid is the most egregious thing I have ever seen in my entire life. They brought this man up 2 days before Eid to Barnsley for a short notice fight. They made him spend Eid over there. They made him cut weight, even though he's always in shape, apparently. Just to tell him on the night of the fight is cancelled.
Yeah, I don't want to go into a diatribe.
I just thought
I'm very worried Ben's going to lose all his fighters because whatever the reason, that cannot run, that cannot happen.
He couldn't even hire out the Lamborghini for Eid Day because he had to focus on a fight. Like, how disappointed would you be?
I didn't know that was a thing, so I can't speak on it. Yeah,
but I just want to touch on a quick topic from you, because I know we talked about Steffi Ball and everything that's happening right now. So I'm going to leave the floor to you, because I feel like this might be an area you know a little bit more about than me, but go ahead.
Well, firstly, I want to say, even though I have a slightly silly Southern accent, my family, my mum, my family are from Yorkshire, so I spend a lot of time up there. I've got a connection there, and of course, boxing is a huge passion of mine, same as it is for everyone, I'm sure, that's watching, and for everyone involved in the podcast. And I again, veering off track, but I'll get back on track. James Cook passed away last week, and I listened to a podcast by Spence Fearon and Tunde Ajayi, and they told so many amazing stories about all the work he did in East London. And then I heard, I was listening to the Boxing News podcast, and they were talking about how, you know, sometimes they've gone to gyms and you give an hour a week, and it's a lot of work when you've got a job and you might have family commitments, whatever it is. But there are boxing trainers up and down the country doing it for free or losing money because they might be driving children home to their parents because their parents don't have the money to get them to and fro the gym. But good people, you know, maybe giving them a bit of fruit because they know that they might not have loads at home. And I say all of that to say boxing is largely a sport where the 1% to 3% make money. At the top, the promoters, the managers, a few boxers make real money. But as a general, it's a real working class sport. A lot of gyms are in really working class parts of town, and they're because they're for children who generally...
You'll have the sexy gyms.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have a few sexy gyms, but for the most part, they are rugged gyms.
Spit and Sport, Sawdust, proper gyms. You know, they might not have the best lighting, or
not everything's David Lloyd.
No, absolutely not. And so many people give up so much their time and their emotion and love. And there are so many vulnerable young people that get into boxing, whether that's just to get fit or to get some anger out. There's a variety of reasons, but I believe in boxing because I know the discipline that it can instill in children that might need discipline. Just keep them on track at school and generally in their lives. And to do what he's been accused, well, I think you can say more than accused of, because he's been charged. And I think once you've been charged as a general, it's kind of a fait accompli. I'd be very surprised if anything changes in regard to his sentencing. To be doing what he's accused of doing is it's devastating for the sport.
He's been released on a conditional bail.
Yeah, good for him. But to be doing that out of your gym, and it scares me because it makes my mind go in places such as youngish people who might be quite easily influenced by people who have nice things or are saying, I'll manage you. And I'm not saying that it happened, but would he have ever got some of the fighters involved in some of the things, some of the nefarious business dealings? And that, to me, is just a bastardization of boxing. It is anti-boxing, is against everything that boxing stands for. Boxing stands for all of the things I just spoke about, the discipline and the hard work and the manners that it teaches you and all of that. And it's unbelievably upsetting and disappointing, I think. And
the bad thing for me is he's got his part, but like I said, the fighters, because and I know they're gonna probably come out and they're gonna speak to the fighters. They'll have people that the next time you see a Terry Harper, Maxie Hughes, whatever, even if they're just there to watch somebody fight, guess what? You're gonna get a microphone in front of you, and they're gonna ask you instantly about it. And it's like, how do you respond? Like, do you get what I mean? People said, "Oh, fighters are PR training." This is where they might need a PR training side of things. Like, here we go. This is how we're going to approach this situation. Just go release a statement on Twitter right now if you really want to, type of thing for it, because that probably would happen.
It's a fantastic point, because I would say Terry Harper, when she started her career, wasn't necessarily the most comfortable in front of the camera. She's obviously got a lot better as she's got older, and you have to get used to it to be successful. But it's such a difficult situation because things do stick. And of course she's not involved, none of the boxers, I'm not saying that, but it's just not something you want to have to deal with. As you said, a camera is stuck in front of your face. She potentially, if things shake out the way I hope it does, she could be going into the biggest fight of her life in the next 6 months. She could be fighting Caroline Dubois, maybe headlining. That's a big fight if they do for women's boxing and boxing generally. And part of the questions will be, where's Steffi? Why people have been asking the same questions? You heard rumors about this kind of thing a few months ago because he wasn't at shows, he wasn't around, and she moved to her old trainer, but Steffi stayed as her manager. And when you hear that kind of thing, you're like, nothing. It didn't really make sense. She lost a few fights, but people lose fights, and you don't stay with a manager and then go to your old amateur coach when Steffi's been guiding you as a pro and doing a good job for you, become a world champion under him. Didn't make any sense. And I feel sorry for all of the fighters involved, because they're going to be asked questions, rightly so, by good journalists. And what's the answer? I didn't know anything about it. I'm really, really surprised. But I don't want to say too much because it's not right to, but he deserves whatever punishment is meted out by the legal system, because I just think to be a boxing trainer and a manager and to espouse everything that the sport is about, and then to do those kind of things away from the sport. But also, I think I'm okay with saying part of his legal defense was that boxers stay at my house, and it might have been them that got things sent or delivered to the house, and it wasn't me.
It's like when, and I'll defend my guy because I always do. It's like when people say he's another Eddie Reynoso fighter that popped, and it's like, no, I'm going to defend Eddie because obviously I've got a strong link with Canelo Alvarez. So people will defend him because it's like He does his job. That's got nothing to do. But it will stick to Eddie, regardless of what people think. It will stick to Eddie Reynoso if a fighter does pop. So in this case, certain things may stick, even though they shouldn't do. But just quickly talking about Canelo Alvarez, I believe the first press conference is this Friday with him and Terence Crawford in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to break down the fight because it's too early, etc. But is this going to be one of them fights where, even though we've got a big 3-fight press conference lined up and it's going to run, they're going to do everything possible leading up to it. It's going to be a civilized build-up.
Yes and no. I think it really does depend on the characters. I think they're both really chill guys until someone sets them off. And I think they're both, because they're both uber winners, they're both brutal. You saw it with Crawford with Spence and the team, and the noise around it annoyed him, which brought out the dog in him. And I think they'll both be fine, but depending on who their managers are and their trainers, if they say anything slightly out of pocket, I think it could, because Canelo's great, isn't he? Now he's learned English. He's a real character. Crawford's a real character. They're both unbelievable fighters. I think they both think they're literally the best in the world. Like, no one is better than them, regardless of weight. I think they both are just utter winners. And so I think it will be cordial, but I think there'll come a point where they both go, yeah, well, I'm going to win because of X, Y, and Z. And the other one's like, are you sure? You really think that? And that might be the first one. And then the second press conference might start on a bit of a awkward turn because they're both like, yeah, I'm not backing down. Why would I back down? Crawford will be like, I'm undefeated. Canelo will say, well, you know, I am the best. I beat up massive guys and you're not that massive. So watch me beat you up. So I just can't wait. That's what the sport was.
I'm going to ask you before we wrap up, who do you have winning it?
Oh, Bud. I do. I've got Bud winning it. I was thinking about it recently, watching the Shay podcast. I think unless he goes up too high, I don't know how he gets beaten. Have you ever seen some of the random Instagram videos of him in like Jordans and jeans going into a gym? Have you seen how much he can lift? The man is an actual freak. I think he is ridiculously strong. I think he hits way harder than people think he does. And I think if Canelo uses that tactic of taking out his arms by literally he punches, almost deadens your arm. I think that can be a great path to victory. But I think if it comes down to boxing skills, footwork, and intensity, I think Crawford, whilst I think he's a few years older, I think he's a bit fresher than Canelo. And again, goes back to the fact Canelo turned pro at 15, has been fighting all of these giants, and he may have been whooping all of these giants, but I don't want to get punched by Callum Smith. Even if I'm winning the fight, Callum Smith is like 6'3" and really can bang. And yeah, I do. I know you're in Team Canelo, and that's fine.
There's no point in asking me. Like, everyone knows Canelo Alvarez, 12 rounds, split decision. I'm gonna think one of the guys may give it to Crawford, but
you think it'll be a good fight? You're not saying that he's just gonna take him apart. It's gonna be a great fight.
I think as the fight gets closer, I'm gonna lean towards Canelo Alvarez might just win this with a bit more ease. For now, I'll give Crawford a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to be like, okay, I'm not gonna fully disrespect you like that. But I think closer to the fight, when I see Canelo Alvarez, when I see some of the videos and stuff, I'm just going to buy into the Canelo Alvarez hype, and I'm just going to be like, he's going to win unanimously. But we'll see, obviously, when that happens. Again, they still don't have a venue for the thing, so that is another thing.
Where's it?
They got location.
Is it Vegas?
It's Vegas. They've got the location. It was originally meant to be a Friday. They moved it to the Saturday. They have not, if you look at any of the posters, unless they confirm it on the Friday, which I doubt, but you never know, they have not confirmed the venue for it yet. So leave that with a bit of open mind with what they want to do versus what their availability realistically is for them. So that's one thing I'm just going to sprinkle out there. But listen, guys, we're going to wrap up today's episode. Ashanti, you know the vibes, man. We always appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you just speak better than Ray. It's more of a pleasure to listen to you.
No one's
than
ever
it
seen
is
that
to read.
before. Thank you. Thank you very much.
But guys, like, share, subscribe. We're gonna hopefully be back next week, and obviously throughout the week there's gonna be content. But until next time, love and peace.
It's another band. All the Muslim cars now, whichever get up. Light up my card with a sweet one bliss. Someone flicks me a baggy. Say, oh, it's another one. It's another one, yeah. It's a full strand, yeah. Oh, it's another one. It's another one, yeah.